But yeah, so like I start listening to Dylan and I just couldn't believe it. And I remember telling my buddy, I'm going to write a song about Mars and I'm going to write it like Bob Dylan. I wanted it to be layered. I wanted it to be about multiple things at once.
When I'm hearing you say, I'm going to write a song about Mars like Dylan and it's going to be layered. Okay, so it's going to be about the planet, it's going to be about space, and it's going to be about what? Like the Greek god?
The Greek god, the god of war, the nature of man to make war, and the apocalypse. So I buried all that stuff in there.
Yeah, so Dylan woke up the bug to write a specific way.
Yeah, it made me aware. Songs can be about something that are heavy and valuable.
You're listening to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is Sam Yoder. Sam is the songwriter of All Things Rise and the upcoming Vineyard Worship single, Jesus Beautiful. Sam is also a chiropractor based in Campbellsville, Kentucky. This episode is brought to you by Monk Drums. Monk Drums is a creative desert venture that strives to combine beauty and business as one heartbeat. Monk Drums' main focus is handcrafted wooden drums that allow us to love, assist, and serve all who accompany us on this path. Use the coupon code FERMENTPOD to get 5% off your Monk Drums order. Find them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Monk Drums, and every Monday look for hashtag Monk Drum Monday. Speaking from personal experience, Monk Drums are wonderfully crafted and they sound amazing. They blend the best traits of both the djembe and the cajon, and I found them to be incredibly versatile in both the live and studio environment. Check them out at monkdrums.com.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at worshipteam.com. Worshipteam.com comes preloaded with over 12,000 songs, with new songs being added all the time. Hillsong, Bethel, Vineyard, Six Steps, Jesus Culture, just to name a few. Service building with Worship Team is a snap, and all the songs are completely legal and licensed. You can also find them on social media, Facebook at worshipteam.com, Twitter at worshipteam, Instagram at worshipteam_WT. Visit them at worshipteam.com for a free trial today. Complete worship planning with thousands of songs, easy interface, mobile apps, and legal rights for your church. All you need in one place, worshipteam.com.
Hey podcast listeners, this is Darren Verrier, Director of Publishing for Vineyard Worship. Our latest single is More Than Anything, written by Adam Russell and sung by Samuel Lane, author of Saved and Adore Him.
Your glory fills our hearts with hallelujah. Your glory fills our hearts with hallelujah. Your glory fills our hearts with hallelujah. Your glory fills our heart with hallelujah.
Find More Than Anything and all of our singles wherever you listen to music.
All right, everybody, I am super excited because one of my very good friends is here. And I feel like I say that every episode.
You do.
I do. But the good news is this one's super true because I'm here with my good friend, Sam Yoder. Sam and I have been friends for 20 years, maybe a little longer.
A little longer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we met in college, didn't we?
I think 96 or 7. Yeah.
That's amazing. I still remember when Eric and I ran into you
Yeah?
at the university. I think you and I had a class.
We did. We had a Bible class.
Yeah, and I got to know you, and you were instantly super interesting to me. And then I told Eric, I'm like, you got to meet this guy, Sam Yoder. And the three of us started hanging out, and well, we've been buds ever since.
We have.
That's so good. Well, hey, here's what I want to do, Sammy. I know that you're my friend, and you're clearly someone who's been, instrumental in my life. And you're a songwriter, and you're a dad, and you're a chiropractor, and you're a musician and an artist and all these things. And And I think a lot of people know some of that, but I want to do what we always do on this podcast, which is just do some personal history.
Sure.
So I guess the first thing we need to do is just start with your last name.
Yoder.
Yeah. I mean, you grew up Amish.
I did. Yeah. I was the third child into an Amish family, and they left when I was pretty young.
How old were you?
I was 6.
Yeah.
But my parents, they were in their 30s. And when they left the Amish, they moved to Eastern Kentucky, and there was no ex-Amish around them.
Okay, so where were they living when they left?
Well, we moved to Berea first, and then we moved to...
Yeah, but is it Ohio?
Fredericktown, Ohio. It's a little Amish community. Yeah. So we had family there, and they had history there, of course, many years.
So that means like your grandparents...
My grandparents
continued to be Amish.
Yeah, my grandparents, my mom's parents were still in Fredericktown. Yeah.
Okay, so when you left at the age of 6, is that old enough that you have like really distinct memories?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally, tons of memories. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was like going from black and white to color, or vice versa, I guess, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, how did that feel to you, like emotionally? Because I can imagine that's massive.
Interesting. I remember being very young, so young that my eyes weren't above the table.
Okay.
And my mom was making bread.
Yeah.
And I said, and I knew the answer to this question, so they'd already taught me, I guess. I said, what happens if we leave the Amish? And she stopped and looked down at me and said, we go to hell.
Dang.
Yeah. So when we were leaving the Amish, I remember having that question, like, I thought we were going to hell if we leave.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a huge change. And then.
So are you saying, okay, you tell that story. Does that mean that there's anxiety when you're, as a kid, oh, I thought we were going to hell?
Well, there was a little bit, but as a kid, you trust your parents. And then, and of course I would have conversations with my older brothers, and they were the more likely the ones to comfort with that sort of thing, because I had 2 older brothers. And they were like, "Oh no, we were wrong. Now we know the truth."
That's right. Okay, so what was the truth that your mom and dad woke up to that caused them to leave the Amish?
Well, we were Old Order Amish, which is as conservative as you can get. There are a lot of Amish out there who are more open.
Yeah.
But the Old Order are so conservative that you don't enjoy or boast a relationship with God. You close your eyes and hope for the best.
Okay.
So
no assurance.
None. You're just living in mystery and in some degree darkness, even though they're really good people. And I think a lot of them know the Lord.
Yeah.
But so when my parents first heard what we consider, in the South, the gospel was, get saved,
yes,
kind of thing. My dad said it was like a light bulb went off for him, which he'd already studied. He'd studied the Bible his whole life, and he had a lot of questions. And he'd met a lot of modern people who loved Jesus, and his dad, my grandpa, was a big questioner. And so he was a bishop and he was a preacher, and he would preach on stuff you're not. In fact, there was a couple of times my grandpa was approached by the rest of the bishops and says, we don't preach about that.
Wow.
And
okay.
He was it's in the Bible though. And he would preach it, and they'd be like, well, we don't talk about that.
Okay. So what does it mean to be a preacher in the Amish?
Well, you can't prepare your sermon, but we call him Dottie. That's grandpa. Dottie would prepare his sermons, which was already against the rules. You're supposed to get up there and let the Holy Spirit lead you.
Really?
Yeah.
That's spontaneous.
Yeah, that's spontaneous. And because we were
but
Old
not everybody
Order,
can preach though.
No,
so he's selected.
Oh yeah. So he was.
What does that
this
mean?
is a great story.
Yeah.
So Dottie told me, first of all, he knew he was going to be picked. They have they have a bench of 7 or 8 guys that are supposedly in the runnings, and they pick one guy. And the way they do it is to put a ribbon in a book, and then they hand out the books to everybody. And whoever gets the ribbon, they're drawing straws. Whoever gets the ribbon is the bishop. So Dottie said the guy before him went to reach for the book off the pile of books, drops the book he picks up. He says it rolled across the barn and landed right at his feet. And the dude in charge is like, okay, yeah, you pick up that book. That's your book. And Dottie's
to your
like,
grandfather.
Yeah. He was like, okay. He knew he had the ribbon.
That's
Isn't that crazy?
Again, another
It's like
literary
charismatic
story,
Amish.
a literary story of like extreme divine providence.
Yeah. So Dottie started preaching, and he would always push the boundaries. He was very aggressive, and he was a confident person, and he didn't mind questioning. And he was eventually placed in the bond. He was
Whoa.
eventually excommunicated.
Why?
I mean, it's a long story.
For
but
his theological
I mean,
leanings?
it was a number of things. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Samuel.
Yeah, he was eventually put in the bond, but he refused to repent because he didn't feel like he'd done anything wrong, and so he died in the bond.
Wow.
But he never. But his kids, a lot of his kids left the Amish. So my dad left, his older brother left, his younger brother left, and his sister left. But he had one sister who didn't leave. So most of my cousins on my dad's side have all left the Amish. Now, they
Wow.
remained very conservative,
Yeah.
like not even evangelical, fundamental Baptist kind of
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
where
Well,
you-
so this is just sort of the backdrop that you grew up in.
Mhm.
Okay, so what was your home life like when you grew up? So your mom and dad are leaving for Jesus, so there's something extremely devout, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
Did you like church?
Well, I mean, I was kind of a good kid, like, yeah, I think I did, and we went to a crazy, like, it was Eastern Kentucky, Southern Baptist, everybody smokes and throws their butts outside the church door.
To smoke.
No, they go outside the church before, sometimes in the middle, and definitely afterwards to smoke, and their butts everywhere. Like, I mean, the place was covered in cigarette butts, right? My parents
Yeah.
were probably the only people in that church who didn't smoke. And, within a few years, like half the congregation owes my dad money and they stop coming or they disappear for a while. And, another great thing about that church is this happened so many times. I have multiple memories of it because I'm a kid.
Yeah.
Some guy would walk up front to the preacher, shake his hand, and hand him his last pack of cigarettes, right? Because he's going to quit.
Yeah, this is
But
it.
a week later, he's smoking.
Yes, of course.
Of course,
He's back
yeah.
out front. Yeah.
But that was like so I grew up with that. But what's funny is like we were really different, as a family, just because of our background. And my parents are still really different. They still have like they do well, but they've never been like belly laugh with non-ex-Amish people. Like if I want to see my parents the most comfortable that they'll ever be, you get them around the ex-Amish. People
Wow.
like themselves.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I can just see them just relax, like they're just floating in a pool of warm water and it,
Yeah,
there's a comfort level there.
They're on soul vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Culture is strange like that, isn't it?
Well, in the Amish culture, you've got an unwritten language, which is oral tradition. And then you have a religion, which is its own sect. And then you have a way of life that is literally a century or 2 centuries old.
Yeah.
Right? And then each church has its own unit. So churches move in units, or they think and feel in units. So, Bruce Springsteen's song, "We Take Care of Our Own," which is kind of sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek. But the Amish actually do. They actually take care of their own. So there's nobody in the Amish who suffers from, medical bills they can't pay. They take care of their old. Nobody's on welfare, and nobody's on disability, and nobody is on Medicare because the Amish take care of all that. In fact, the Amish got an exemption from the U.S. government for those specific things because they promised the U.S. government, don't tax us, we're going to take care of our own. And they do. So there's a culture there that my mom and dad were so deeply rooted in by their 30s, and then they leave, and they've never quite, an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I called my dad a few months ago because I wanted to check to make sure that I had a song correct in my head. That's an old Amish song. And he sang it over the phone. It's just gorgeous, right? And he gets to the end, and my dad's not a verbal, expressive guy like I am, right? And he gets kind of quiet. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" He's like, "Well, I just, that song makes me feel," and he kind of stops. I'm like, "What does it make you feel, Dad?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Well, like something's been lost."
Oh man.
Yeah. And I'm like, "Well, Dad, that's all you knew for 30 years of your life. And then you left it all in one day."
Yeah. And not only were those the things that he knew for 30 years, but those were the things he knew, during the formational moments of his life.
Yeah.
You know, at his mother's breast, being weaned,
All
going
his
to
friends.
school, going
everybody.
through going through those middle school adolescent years. Those are like massively formational moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the backdrop.
Yeah.
Hey, what was the song?
I don't know the name of it, but
Can
I
you
can sing it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why don't you give yourself
All
an
right,
inch
so
or
I'm
two
gonna
on that mic?
I'm back this mic up a little bit.
Yeah, do that. Yeah, that's good.
Lay free to sprau Christus der to seinem ser corbe. So yeah, that's one verse. It goes on for about 30 minutes like that.
Wow. Is it German?
Mm-hmm. It's
I've
Dad
never-
says it's a chant, which he has, I guess, is oral tradition. I mean, it doesn't feel like a chant to me.
Yeah, there's melody to it.
Oh, it's a beautiful melody to it. The way the Amish do it, then only a man can be a caller, but the caller starts the song and then the rest of the congregation comes in. Now, we were Old Order, so we couldn't do harmonies. So everything was in single melodies.
Old Order, no harmonies?
No harmonies. It's a sin to have a harmony.
Oh, my word. See, there's so many things about the Amish that's truly beautiful, right?
Right.
I mean,
oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
right. I mean, I think people on my side of the ball, you know, quote, I'm using air quotes, English culture. I think we look at the Amish and we go, wholesome family.
Oh, and they are.
And it
Most of
is,
them.
right?
Most of them.
It
Mhm.
totally is. And then, you know, you hear things like that and it's like, wow, that's a really strange place to draw the line, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But the way I just sang that song, they sing it kind of like they embellish it. They have these little nuances and they do these things with the melodies, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if all you got is the melody, you're gonna play with it.
Well, and then you know the people that have the high vocals like I do or my dad, they're the ones that end up being the callers.
Okay, so what does it mean
Because
to
you're
be
in a
the call-
barn. You're in
Yeah.
a barn and you're standing around. You know, the men sit on one side, women sit on the other, and the man will start the song. Or sometimes the caller has a whole little segment he sings by himself, and then
Okay, but when you say caller, you don't mean call and response.
I don't know. I mean, I was too young to remember that.
Do
but
you
I just
remember
know-
singing in the group though?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know that I sang because I didn't really learn the song, so I had to learn that song. I remember the melody, but I might have got the lyrics all wrong. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm singing. I
Yeah.
can know a little bit,
Yeah.
but no, I remember the church services are forever long. I mean, they're like African American long, like long
3 and 4 hours.
3 or 4 hours. Yeah.
How long does the preacher preach?
Well,
Like Ray Hollenbach long? Solid burn.
I don't know. But Ray's got the yeah. It just depends on how far the Holy Ghost takes him. You know.
Okay. Yeah. So it could be it could change from Sunday to Sunday
Mm-hmm.
and it would be in that spontaneous vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Sammy, one of the things that's also occurred to me about knowing you and in our friendship, and maybe it's because of when you and I became friends and how we became friends in that Bible class that we were in.
Yeah.
When I think of you, one of the things I know is that you love the Bible.
Uh-huh.
That's been consistent through our friendship. You're one of my favorite people to talk about the Bible with.
Yeah.
Did you learn to love the Bible in the Amish, or is it something different?
I remember the first time I loved the Bible was I was a kid. I was 11 years old, and my mom and dad had this Bible storybook. It was full of pictures, and I read the whole thing. You know, I'm 11, so I'm already.
Was it like a kid's Bible?
No, it was. I mean, I can still find it. It's like a classic, probably from the 40s or 50s or 30s
But
or
it
something
just
like
had pictures.
that. No, it had stories.
Yeah.
I mean, it had stories, but it had pictures to go with it. But I read the whole thing, and I got to the end, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I want more." So I opened up the Bible, and I don't know anything about it yet. And I'm like, "Okay, where's a little book?" So I find this book called Ecclesiastes.
You started there.
I started at Ecclesia. I read the whole thing and I got to the end of it. And I'm 11 years old and I just bawled my eyes out.
Really?
Yeah, I just remember and it had to be the existential weight of that book, which I'm already leaning in that direction. I'm the kid that asked, will we go to hell? Or, what's going to happen? Knowing the answer, right? So yeah, I just bawled my eyes out. I remember that's the first time I really became intrigued with the Bible. And then when I was 13, I went to OBI, which I got to tell you that story.
What is OBI?
OBI is a Anita Baptist Institute.
Oh,
I went there for 2 years.
This is because your mom thought you guys were hog wild.
My brother David in 5th grade drew a penis on his homework. And his teacher called my mom to tell her that
Is this public school?
Yeah, public school.
Okay.
Your son drew a penis on his homework. And my mom thinks she's losing her boys.
Oh, no.
So she researches and finds this Baptist school, which was actually for troubled kids. Like
drug addicted kids.
Well, broken home kids. It was a beautiful place, though. Like, we had every race there is under the sun there, all thrown into one. Because in Eastern Kentucky, all you got is white people. And you got a few black people, but that's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah.
So I go to OBI, and I meet people from all over the world. My best friend was an Ethiopian.
Wow.
He
What was his name?
Muslim background, Ashanafi Mahmoud. But Muslim background, dark-skinned Ethiopian. We were best friends for 2 years. First person ever told I love you outside of my mom.
Really?
Was Ashu, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
We had such a beautiful friendship. But my brother's best friend was a First Nations Navajo descendant,
Yeah.
My brother dated an Ethiopian while he was there. And so we met people from all over the world. We met people from the inner city.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. And one more point I'll make about that. At OBI, you had just a whole slew of people who had experienced nothing but rejection their whole life, right?
Yeah.
Because they were either really unique or talented or different. And we had been very different. We were the family that if you drew a penis on your homework, you're going to be sent off to school.
Sent off to boarding school.
Yeah, so that was the first time in my life that I just felt like I fit in.
And how old were you?
I was 13. But that's when I read the Gospels the first time.
Okay, so you started with Ecclesiastes, existential weight, cry.
Yeah, and then when I got to OBI, I'm by myself. My brothers are there, but my mom and dad aren't around in a new environment. So I read the New Testament in about a week, and it just radically shifted my thinking. I started actually having conversations with God at that point.
Okay, so it initiated something that we might call prayer in your life.
Yeah, I began to think of him as a person who was alive, and I had before that, but it'd been kind of more childlike, more like storybook, more like Sunday school, paste the picture up on the felt board kind of thing,
Yeah.
And that's the first time I had a dream from God. Was there's a song by Cheap Trick called "The Flame." So the lyric in the chorus is, wherever you go, I'll be with you. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Whenever you need someone to lay your head or something upon. Anyway, it's just all about in my dream, I'm standing before God's throne and he's singing this to me.
He's singing a Cheap Trick song. I love this.
And it was playing in the background. It was morning time, right? But I'm waking up while, you're a teenager. It's hard to wake up.
Yeah, in between.
And I had this crazy dream. Of course, it was it made me so warm and happy. And I told my teacher the dream, and she's like, well, you better watch out. That rock music, it might not be from God.
The 80s and 90s in the church were a trip, man.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So, that was, that's when the first time I actually really read the Bible, I would say was at that age.
Yeah.
In a great context to do it into. Lots of friends and
acceptance.
Yeah.
Fitting in.
And I was, I've always been semi-decent at art. And actually in my Eastern Kentucky school, I was the best around. I get to OBI and I probably drew all over my homework. I'm in 7th grade. And the teacher shows it to the art teacher who is only in high school. Well, they come, and this is how cool OBI is. If you've got a talent, man, they just pour into you. So they're like, okay, Sam, you come to the high school art class, and they took me out of some boring class in middle school, and for an hour every day, I could go hang out with these high schoolers, and those dudes were talented. That was the first time I was around other people. I'm like, whoa, they're way better than me. OBI was just stacked with interesting, unique people.
Mm. And how do you think that has shaped you?
Well,
Because I can imagine it would.
No, I mean, as a 13-year-old, yeah, all of a sudden I become super, super aware of the diversity of the world, you know? And I mean, I learned cuss words in other languages.
That's right.
I didn't even cuss in English, but I could cuss in another language.
I can cuss in Swahili.
Yeah. So, you know, I had a good friend from Ghana. His name was Muhammad.
Yeah.
And another thing is my parents were always, so they were Amish, they were a little different, but they were really open. And so we would like, during our breaks, we would bring these kids home with us.
Yeah.
From other countries and different walks of life. And
yeah,
it was great. They always felt welcome in our home.
Yeah. You know, Sam, just hearing you tell this story, it's funny to me because it starts with your brother David drawing a penis on his homework. Man, that's the most providential penis in the world.
Right.
But it's funny to me because this ends up in some ways maybe actually being God and being a gift from God to you guys, right?
Yeah.
Because you're Amish kids living in a modern world suddenly, and I can imagine how you'd be an outsider. And then God
totally.
just providentially puts you in a school of outsiders and like in some ways lets you guys know like there's more than this world that you've seen in Eastern Kentucky.
Right.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I was only there 2 years, but no, it shaped my life so much, man.
Yeah, I could see how that would be so.
Oh, and then I went back to Kentucky, and I went to the school in Eastern Kentucky, which OBI is in Eastern Kentucky too, right? But I went back to public school, and I just remember thinking how kind of boring it was. It was just really boring. I mean, you get it.
Yeah, I can feel that. It's the difference.
Everything was the same.
Yeah. Yeah. It's back to black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that.
And it was okay. I had a great, I'll tell you one story. I had a teacher when I was a sophomore. They put me in AP English. And she was massively influential in my life. As a first, so she assigned 7 books for us to read. And I read 2 or 3 of them before the summer started. She wants to read a couple of them. It's the first time I ever read Atheist, right? So we read Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Steinbeck, Faulkner.
Faulkner.
Yeah, Faulkner.
Faulkner's
Hawthorne.
tough, bro.
I know. As I lay down, it's amazing. Hawthorne, Stephen Crane, and I'm probably forgetting one. But anyway.
You're reading the classics.
We're reading the classics.
The best of the American writers.
Yeah, and she was agnostic. So she was the first person I was ever around, and I'm vulnerable to those kind of things anyway. So she starts in class, questioning the virgin birth and all these things. And yet, she was as full of the Holy Ghost as anybody I've ever seen because she was so kind to people. And she was so patient with no matter where you were from or what your background was like. She was truly kind to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really kind.
And so did that wake up did you already have literary
No, that's what turned me on.
inclinations or did she wake you
up? So
up?
I wrote, our first assignment was to do some sort of story about ourselves. I forgot what that's
Personal
called.
narrative.
Personal narrative, something like that. So I wrote about us leaving the Amish. And she already had a reputation of being really hard. Like almost nobody gets A's in class. And she gave me a 97 on that thing.
Oh.
And then she takes me aside and she's like, you got a gift. And you need to be aware of that. So she was really sweet to me like that. And in college, when I went back one time, now this made me feel really awkward. I'll go back one time in college to say hi to her, right? And as I'm leaving, she's got a class full of people. She goes, Samuel. And I turn around. She says, I love you.
Hilarious.
And I'm like fumbling my words, trying to say, oh, you too. And then I just duck out of the door as quick as I can,
Oh, that's funny. So did it feel innocent or did it feel cougary?
No, it felt innocent. It felt
That's
genuine.
wonderful.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, she told us a story about her husband driving down the road, hearing a voice says, turn around, go back to that barn. There's someone needs your help. He turns around, goes back to the barn, and there was a pregnant lady who was stranded and had been, I guess she'd suffered some sort of abuse and was stranded. And so he got her help,
Wow.
She told that kind of story. And even at the time, I was like, that's got to be God.
Yeah.
I guess, not a demon, right?
Yeah, definitely not a demon. Yeah, that's really interesting. So she's kind of agnostic, but
Maybe
clearly,
she's not. Maybe she's just progressive Christian. I
Yeah,
don't know.
but clearly
she
something
would
else
never
was going
tell
on.
us exactly what it was, but she was not afraid to challenge you.
That's wonderful. And so it woke up.
Oh,
it woke
yeah.
up literary thinking or
Yeah,
inclinations in your own
curiosity
life.
into the existential stuff.
Hey, let's take a right turn here. Let's talk music for a minute.
Sure.
I mean, I think at least a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, they know you as a musician.
Right.
I mean, they sing your songs, you know? This is mostly a Vineyard podcast. Lots of non-Vineyard people listen to it, but, you know, a lot of people in the Vineyard have heard your songs and sang them. Where did the music bug bite you?
Well, I remember, I mean, I've always been kind of vulnerable to music, but I remember being 14, I think, and hearing these old Celtic songs that were stories. And they would just, what I loved about it, Adam, was they would just transport me into an enriched environment of possibility, like imagination. And I remember being like, I want to write songs at that time.
So your first foray into having music make you feel alive is Celtic folk tunes?
Yeah, from the Thistle and Shamrock. See, we weren't allowed to listen to
NPR.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to listen to rock music. So, but we were allowed to listen to, or I found it. I mean, the way I found it was we were coming back from OBI. My brother at the time was 16 and he was able to drive. And we had the radio dialed, you know, like, and we were trying to like skip around. And we come
and you were good. You were good kids, so you would skip the rock stations.
Well, yeah, we'd kind of cheat a little bit, you know. Occasionally, if we heard a song we liked, and so I hear this amazing sound I've never heard before, and it's like it's coming and going because we're in the mountains, right? And I just like I don't let Isaac turn the radio, and I'm like, oh, this is so incredible. And all it was I know now it was a Ullinium pipe, right? Davy Spillane, and it took me, so I listened to that after it went off, I couldn't hear who it was. And I knew it was Thistle and Shamrock because I listened to the end and they always would say, you have any questions, write to Charlotte, North Carolina, P.O. Box 560-646, something like that, right? I listened so many times, I probably have it memorized.
Yeah, I think it's in Matthews, North Carolina,
Yeah.
which is right outside of Charlotte.
Well, I think they moved it now, but so I listened for the next 6 months to a year trying to find that song. And I wrote them and I finally paid them like $20 to send me a list. This is before internet or anything like that, right? So I mailed them a self-addressed posted stamped envelope with money to pay for the copies. And they said, and then I go
Show
through
notes.
trying to
Did they
figure
send you
out
show
what
notes?
song I heard, you know?
Yeah.
And I finally found it. I buy like 2 or 3 records trying to find it, and I finally put my finger on it. And
Man.
it was this song called Midnight Walker by Davy Spillane. You know?
Oh man, analog days.
Yeah,
So beautiful.
it was crazy. But anyway, that's when I had the bug. Yeah, I started listening to this music, and what I really loved about the old Celtic folk tunes is the imagination in it. You know,
Really?
these stories of these people.
Well, and the melodies
places.
are otherworldly, right?
Yeah,
like, I
melodies
mean,
are
that's
great.
true melodic singing.
Yeah, the melodies are like Amish melodies and move up and down a lot. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I think about Celtic music, not that I'm a connoisseur, but the thing that I'm always struck by is the melodies they're amazing.
Oh, I think they're great. Yeah.
And what's interesting to me about that, as you're telling this story, you are an ex-Amish kid living in Eastern Kentucky, and there's definitely some sort of a connection between Eastern Kentucky and Scotland and Ireland.
There is. Mm-hmm.
Like there's a massive. The music is similar.
Their roots. Yeah, the Appalachian music is definitely Celtic, and then of course it has the African influence as well from the slaves.
Like banjo.
Yeah, the banjo and even the African. A lot of the old tunes, I'm pretty sure, were written by slaves. I mean, so we can trace some of the old tunes, and I love old tunes. You know that.
Yes.
We can trace a lot of our old tunes to Ireland and Scotland,
Yes.
right? But then there's quite a few that we can trace to the Appalachia. and the Deep South. And at that point, we lose the origins. We don't know if they came from the slaves or if they came from, the poor whites, but they definitely came from one of the two, and a lot of times probably from both. And the thing that I love about I could talk for days about the old tunes. So the old tunes have this it's like evolution where, somebody starts a song and they get something that's working, right? Just like in an evolutionary species, something's going to help survive the thing. And as it gets passed from generation to generation, new ears hear it and they tweak it and they tweak it and tweak it. And then of course, in different regions, you have the same tune, but it's tweaked differently. So you have different lyrics, maybe that is with one expression and different lyrics with a different expression. But after a period of time, after generations of this, you end up with these tunes that have been
highly curated.
Highly curated. They're so awesome, right? You hear them.
They're
and
true.
They feel so spot on.
Yeah.
So the melodies have been curated, they've been vetted. The lyrics have been vetted. Of course, a lot of the lyrics of these old tunes, they borrow from one another.
Yeah, and there's
so you have these themes that show up from
there's like a literary story motif that you're taking
There's a motif,
from.
just like you were if you were, using the Bible.
Yeah.
And so, there's like the lily white, you can hear the lily white in so many of these songs. So there's a lily white dress, a lily white heart, lily white skin, lily white, whatever. And then, there's Willie the murderer.
Yeah, he kills everybody, right? Willie's always the bad guy.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm pretty proud of myself on that one because I kind of discovered that just by listening to this. Because that's not necessarily common tongue. So there's this character, there's these murder ballads.
Yes, but Southern Gothic murder ballads is a thing.
But in most of them, by far and away, the murderer is named Willie. And so, of course, I've written at least one tune with Willie as the murderer.
Yeah. Don't you have a tune called Killin' Willie?
No, Matt Despain and I have talked about writing it, but we never have. So
when we play
together,
a brilliant
we call
idea,
ourselves
though, right?
Killin' Willie. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah, we've not written it yet. But so I like these old tunes.
Well, what's interesting to me as well, especially as it relates to even your personal story, that you respond to what we might call old tunes, which are Appalachian tunes that have an origin that is highly uncertain. Definitely comes from slave music and poor white music, right? So there's that. Then there's also this story that you've already told where you're having your heart come alive with traditional Irish folk tunes, right? And sort of one way of seeing your own story, or one way I'm hearing it, is there's this nexus point, which is your time at OBI, which is where you're this white kid who's in Eastern Kentucky who's meeting all these African kids and kids from around the world. And so there's this sense in which it was maybe awakened, or that's how I'm hearing it. Something was awakened to you in terms of other cultures and nations, and then Irish tunes and Appalachian tunes, and you're just sort of wide open.
Well, and I think Eric and I have talked about this. I think immigrants tend to experience what you're talking about because they have their foot in a culture that they know really well, and they have their foot in a culture that they know as long as they're kids. Now, if you're an adult immigrant, it's really hard. I know from watching my parents, it's really hard to assimilate, and you always feel most at home when you're around your people. But for the kids, like Ted Kim and I have talked about this, you have your foot in one culture, and you know that culture just as well as the other one, but you have your foot in both cultures. And so because I think you're in the divide, I think it probably expands your left-right brain thing, and you're probably just more...
I can totally see that.
More curious just by nature, probably, or more open to different ways of thinking, maybe. And I'm not trying to say that we all need to go out and be immigrants. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just saying I think there's something built into it.
Yeah, well, clearly being an immigrant is a struggle at a certain level, and clearly it forces people at times into, difficult situations, but there's also a gift inside of it, and that's what I hear.
Yeah. So music-wise, that's, you know me, I've written a few worship tunes, but my heart really bleeds towards the artist expression of whatever's out there.
Yeah.
That's what I really love.
I know it. And I know that you've written so many songs. When did you start writing?
Well, I started when I told my mom, I was like, I want to write music, and I was about 14. So I started on the piano just playing around and taught myself how to figure out chords and melodies. And then I started putting lyrics, and they were horrible lyrics. I mean, because the thing is, you got to remember my influence. My influence is either old hymns, which are great lyrics, but they're a singular genre, right? It's one way of thinking about the world. And then the Celtic music, right? Which is still a singular genre. It's one way of thinking about the world. So I didn't have any Dylan tunes in my head. I didn't have Bruce Springsteen and these incredible lyricists rolling around in my head, right? So when I start out, but finally penning lyrics at 16, 17 years old, they're mostly pretty bad. I mean, I turned a few that were pretty good even by 19 or 20, some lyrics that I'm still like, that's not actually not that bad.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was pretty bad.
And what were you writing about? Were you writing hymns, or were you just writing like?
No, yeah, I wrote a little bit like that.
Or were you writing life songs in a Celtic style?
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
Kind of just whatever. And then when I was in my 20s, because I was really religious, I would just take these Bible passages and put them to tunes.
Yeah.
And I've always been good at rhyming, so I could figure out how to rhyme, and I would do that.
Yeah.
Which, looking back, sounds boring, but at the time it was very, very interesting to me, and it also put the Bible, inside me.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you write like that. Those, especially if you're writing like Psalms or something, those lyrics, they never leave you. Once you attach a melody to it,
yeah,
it's there forever. Sammy, when did you start writing like real proficiently?
Probably
stuff that you are still like,
it's good.
That matters.
Yeah,
that counts.
After I discovered Bob Dylan.
Okay, when did you discover Bob?
I was 30.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. Yeah. I was 30 years old. So, my wife and I, we moved to Kansas City. I'd heard a Dylan tune here or there, of course, but I
you
just
didn't realize exactly what it was.
Never really listened,
Yeah.
And we go to a movie, and I watched the trailer for I'm Still Here, or whatever that's called, the Dylan film.
Yeah,
Don't
there's
Look
several.
Back, no, it's the one that has
No Direction Home?
Charlotte, no, whatever. Yeah, it has the actress playing him.
Yeah.
Whatever her name is.
I can't remember that.
her name.
Is that No Direction Home?
Maybe. No, that's
Is that the documentary?
yeah, that's a documentary.
Okay.
It's a dramatized one.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see that, and I'm just like, dang, what is this? So I go home and I just fall into a Dylan. For a year. I listened to nothing but Dylan.
What record?
Oh, I
caught you?
started early.
Man, early Dylan blows my mind.
It's
And
my
you and
favorite.
You and I have been talking about it lately. I go in Dylan seasons,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been out of one for a while, and I'm kind of back into one for about 3 months now, and I've been listening to really early Dylan, those first couple records, like Freewheelin' Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't believe he's 20 years old, 21 years old.
Okay, that's what I was about to mention.
Insane. It's insane.
You and I have a mutual friend, Eric.
Yeah.
Eric and I were talking about it the other day. Dylan is writing these. He's 20. These songs are like, they're like apocalypse.
I know. It's
And
insane.
this is the early
he
60s.
had the Holy Ghost. I've heard someone else say, yeah, he had the Holy Ghost is why he did that,
It's phenomenal. He clearly can't know really. He can't really understand what he's writing. Or that's my opinion.
No,
what do you
but
think?
he's so well read. He consumed literature nonstop, right? And he had a near photographic memory, and of course he's super creative. And I think he's an 8 on the Enneagram. I think he's
You
just
think he's
a
an
hard
8?
charger.
You
Absolutely.
think he's not a 4?
No, he's not at all a 4. I've heard people say he's bull crap. He's not a 4. If you look at his lyrics, they're always confrontational. They're apocalyptic.
Yeah.
He was so confident as a young man. 4s are insecure, man. They're self-aware, and they're way too,
And Dylan never really had to like drink himself into a stupor phase either.
No, I mean, he did some drugs, but that was just try to stay awake.
That's 60.
So like I start listening to Dylan, and I just couldn't believe it. And I remember telling my buddy, Luke, Luke.
Luke Dealing.
Yeah, I'm like,
our South
Luke,
African friend.
I'm going to write a song about Mars, and I'm going to write it like Bob Dylan. And I wrote
and what did
Mars.
you? Okay, so what? But when you say I'm going to write it like Bob Dylan, what does that mean to you?
I wanted it to be layered. I wanted it to be about multiple things at once. I wanted it to be a surface layer. I wanted there to be something underneath it, which I accomplished.
So when I'm hearing you say I'm going to write a song about Mars like Dylan and it's going to be layered, I'm hearing, okay, so it's going to be about the planet, it's going to be about space, and it's going to be about what? Like the Greek god?
The Greek god, the god of war, the nature of man to make war, and the apocalypse. So I buried all that stuff in there. And then I also made sure I had these rhyme schemes. And another thing I noticed about Dylan is he'll rhyme 2 or 3 syllables in a row, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to rhyme one syllable.
Yeah.
But you can start rhyming 2 and then you start rhyming 3. So I did that. I started rhyming. I made, and then I used all sorts of internal rhymes, which I learned my internal rhymes probably from Robert Burns, because listen to old Celtic music. Robert Burns was the master of internal rhymes. This is from like the 1600s, 1700s. This guy's songs are still around.
Well, and there's nothing more pleasing to sing than an internal rhyme.
Oh, it falls
when you
off the
hit
tongue.
it in the middle, it's like, isn't it funny how it makes your insides feel happy?
Oh,
It's like, whoa, that was really fun.
And most of the time you're passive to it. You don't know why. But
Yeah, you're like, wow, that was great. What was that?
Yeah.
So Dylan woke up the bug to write a specific way.
Yeah, it made me aware. It just made me more aware of like, dude, songs can be about something that are heavy and valuable. You know what I mean? Which I kind of already knew that.
Like Dylan's song, With God on Our Side.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, okay, listen, if you're listening to this podcast and you really don't know Dylan that much, you should listen to the song With God on Our Side and realize he wrote that really early in a
Oh, he's
tumultuous time. And like, he's telling hard truth. This goes to
Yeah.
your Enneagram 8 thing.
Yeah.
Like, this song is flipping hard, man.
Yeah, and it's true, though.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a song about what? Like religious zealotry and how confident we get when we think God's with us and we end up becoming the opposite of God.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you wrote Mars.
Mm-hmm.
What else did you start writing?
Well, then I write some good songs, man.
Yeah.
I start writing some good songs. I started I was also in Kansas City and I'm going through chiropractic school, which is incredibly stimulating for my brain. You know, I'm learning basically a new language. So I'm exercising my brain nonstop. And I've always loved space, which we don't have time to get into Carl Sagan, but that was a major life change for me when I read Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot. I was in my mid-20s or early 20s. And so, I think that's when I started dreaming about writing a space record.
Yeah.
And I already had Mars, and I think Mars was the first song I wrote that made it on the record.
Okay. And I know
that
you've
did in
completed
2008, by the way. That's an old song now for me.
Okay, so you've completed that record now.
Actually, Diamond was written earlier than that, but yeah.
Really? Okay.
Diamond I wrote in 2002 or 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
but
amazing.
But it's got a new chorus though. The
Yeah.
original chorus was slop.
Yeah. So you are hearing Dylan and you're going to chiropractic college. You're already a musician. You're live to that. You've been influenced by Thistle and Shamrock and things like that. And you're writing space songs. Why are you writing space songs?
Well, I love
Sammy,
space.
that's crazy.
I
What are
love
you doing?
Space. I love it so much. Okay.
So
I
why do
gotta
you love
say-
space?
I mean, if we have time, I got to say a thing or two. Oh man, do
We're
we have
good.
time?
We're good. We're good.
I got to say a thing or two about Carl Sagan, right? So this is important, at least to me.
Yes.
And I don't want to throw people out.
No, you're not
You
going to
know.
throw anybody out. This
All
is
right.
personal narrative.
So, ex-Amish, whatever. I was at a bookstore with Eric Hirchin, and I pull out this book on space. And I'd already been to a planetarium once in my life, and that was when I knew I was in love with space. Pull out this book with a picture of space, and I don't even know what Carl Sagan is. So I buy the book for like $5 or $10, and it's called Pale Blue Dot. And I read the book, and I get to the end, and now Carl Sagan is an atheist. And this time I didn't even believe in evolution, right? So it's stretchy, but he was so poetic. He was so beautiful. He was so compelling. I couldn't stop reading it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I disagree with this guy on about everything, but oh my God, this is so beautiful. So I keep reading it, and he has this vision for the future of humanity, right? Which is that we are made for greatness. Now, he wouldn't say made, but he would say that we have evolved for greatness, right?
Yeah.
And that the entire cosmos is awaiting us. The mysteries of the cosmos are awaiting, right?
Yeah.
And this just I just can't stop.
Yeah, the Earth is a little launch point.
It's
a
the
launch
launch
pad.
point, right? And I realized for the first time in my life, quietly, because I didn't say it out loud, that I had encountered a story of humanity's future that I felt was more beautiful than the one I'd been told in church.
And what was the one that you felt that you had received at church?
Well, go to heaven when you die and sing hymns the rest of eternity.
Yeah, be bored.
Yeah. And it was just like, wait, is it possible that the cosmos is waiting for us to terraform and to bring beauty to it and bring order? And, because we got these desolate planets that, at least around us, that we know are just desolate. So anyway, that changed my life. And that's why, I start writing space stuff. And it's okay, we talk about the Fermi paradox for
I
a
love
second.
it. Yeah. What is the
So
what
my
is the
favorite
Fermi paradox? Yeah.
My favorite paradox there is. See, now I'm laying back
No,
because
this
I
is-
just need a beer and I'm good.
Yeah, this is good. Let's go there.
So Enrico Fermi was certainly not the first person to think about this, but he made it popular because he was a very intelligent scientist, and he elevated the narrative, right, so that people would take it serious, which is basically the question, where are they? Now, on its face, that doesn't look like such a
Meaning
profound...
extraterrestrial life.
Yes. On its face, it doesn't look so profound, but when you start doing the maths, right, so, the universe has been around 14 billion years. Stars first formed around 12 billion or more, 12.5. Planets start forming around about 10 billion years ago, right? So we've got 10 billion years, right, of potential life, right? And so, let's go with Earth. Earth is about 4.2 billion years old, and at least life has been around for 3.2, even though now they're beginning to think it's probably earlier than that. So at least a billion years of dormancy, minimum billion years of dormancy.
And then something happens.
And in a short span of 3.2, which is a long time, but in the universe, it's only less than a fourth of the time. You have us, right? And so imagine that life started some 9 billion years ago. Where are they?
Yeah.
So
meaning, why haven't we seen them? Why are
haven't
they
we
not
seen
here?
them?
Why,
And then,
why do we
not
not
only
see
now,
evidence?
now I told you the numbers on time. So now we got to talk about the numbers on matter. So, our galaxy alone has 100 billion stars, of which about 25% of them have planets around them, right?
And that's just our galaxy.
That's just our galaxy.
There's
and
multiple galaxies.
100 billion galaxies or more, way more probably, but a minimum 100 billion that we've calculated so far. And so, yeah, where are they? So the answer is, well, maybe there's a filter, right? Maybe the filter is all the way back to life. Maybe life is so freaking rare that we're it.
That'd be
Now, I
one.
don't like that. My bias is against that because that's really boring. And that means that what we see on Mars right now or what we see, that's it everywhere.
Just cold.
The whole
Cold, lifeless,
universe
dead
is
rocks.
nihilism
Yes.
at that point, right?
Yeah.
There is no hope and there's no creativity anywhere. And so I don't personally like that, but it's possible. It's a possibility. But, but the filter could also be that once life gets so advanced that they destroy themselves, right?
Yeah, I've heard about this. They call it the sieve.
Yeah, so
Right.
you could imagine the dude that goes into the mosque in New Zealand, right? What if he'd had a nuke?
Sure.
All we need is one crazy person with a big enough nuke,
Yes.
and we're all done for.
Yeah.
Right? The whole planet.
Well, we've already got enough nukes on the planet to blow it up several times.
And I suspect there are probably a few filters.
Yeah.
I suspect one of the major filters is consciousness as we understand it. right?
Meaning?
Well, so there's degrees of consciousness. So like a chimp, if you put a spot on a chimp's forehead and you put him in front of a mirror, he rubs his forehead trying to get the spot off. So the chimp's aware that he's not looking at another chimp, but he's looking at himself, right?
Yes.
Whereas most animals are not like that. They think they're just looking at another animal.
Yeah.
And so there's a degree of consciousness there, but not to the degree that we enjoy consciousness, which is we are aware of our own death and we prepare for it.
Oh, yeah, we're aware of the future.
We are vulnerable to music and art.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of sophistication. It's more than just intelligence in my mind. And I've even heard one person say that it's possible that consciousness as we understand it isn't a progressive thing. In other words, you don't top things on top of it. It's literally you're either there or you're not. You're all there or you're not, right? There's no graded degree of consciousness as we get it. Now, I'm not saying that's true.
Yeah.
But if it were, that could be the filter.
Well, and here's the other part too. As it relates to consciousness, no one's been able to explain it yet.
No, and how can we?
Yeah.
Right?
It's phenomenal.
So it's possible that that's the filter. In other words, and the evidence for that would be that we've had 5 billion species have gone extinct, right? And we have about 5 billion species that are still alive. And of all of those, we're it in terms of the kind of consciousness that we enjoy, right? That's a lot of species without our kind of consciousness. So that could be the filter. But there could be...
We could be the tip of the spear.
Then I've heard the argument like this, and I hope I'm not boring your
No, you're not.
non-scientific
This
people.
is fun because I think it relates to who you are and even the record you're making.
Yeah, and so I've heard an argument say that, well, what happens is once a species gets so advanced, what they do is they just go online, man. They say, forget the biological. I'm uploading my brain, and I'm going online. But I don't buy that, because I think the very sort of genetics that it would take to get to a place where you are.
Yeah, it would be hard to deny it, right?
You can't just be like, I'm going to give up danger and I'm going to give up risk in order to be safe and play video games all day. I mean,
Sure.
Otherwise we'd all be doing it.
Sure.
And
That said, though, a lot of people are doing it.
yeah, but it's not sustainable. But I mean, the thing is, it doesn't make you happy though. Right? So what comes along with that stuff is depression and all sorts of other things. Like, it's not sustainable, even if it were biologically sustainable, it's not, psychologically sustainable. And so one of my songs on the record addresses that thing. It's called We'll Fly Away, So it basically says, or what I tried to say in that song was, we're going to fly away from escapism.
Yeah.
And fly into space, more or less.
So what we have here is that you got touched by Celtic music, Bob Dylan, and Carl Sagan, and you spent the better part of really a decade writing some songs about space and the possibility that life could be pointed outward and upward and beyond. And Sammy, I know you so well, that seems perfectly normal. And when a lot of people listen to the podcast, they're like, this is bananas. What
Yeah,
would
it's
you
a little
say-
bit bananas.
What
It
would you
is.
say to people who are like, that is, I've never heard of anyone who thinks like this.
Well, they're out there.
That's
I hope
right.
they are.
No,
They
they
won't like
are.
my record if they.
No, they are. I just think it's such a unique perspective.
Yeah.
I do like the idea that whatever the cosmos is, that there's some sort of an invitation in it.
I think there is, man. I do.
Yeah, there's an invitation.
There is. We've been wanderers. Humans have been wanderers from the beginning. I tweeted this a while back, but in response to Andy Squires. But this is the crazy thing about humanity. I mean, this is like, we've already done some amazing stuff. Let's try to do this again, and it would happen. So before we invented anything more sophisticated than canoes, we populated the globe.
Yeah.
And like everywhere except for Antarctica, man. We had our cousins living everywhere. That means that some of our cousins jumped in canoes and went out to the islands.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Well, there's
our
something
desire to explore,
and danger.
our desire for the real possibilities of risk and reward. We can't get away from
Well,
it.
it's like, did you watch that Alex Honnold documentary, Free Solo? The guy who free soloed El Capitan with no ropes?
No, I didn't. I need to.
Oh my gosh, Sammy, you're going to freak out. Okay, so there's this climber. His name is Alex Honnold. It's a doc that came out, I don't know, a few months ago. It's called Free Solo, El Cap in Yosemite. I think it's 30-some hundred feet of granite straight up. He climbs the thing with no ropes, that's a microscopic picture of what we're talking about. It's
Yeah.
like the human capacity to explore, to do something no one else has done, to go someplace that no one else has gone.
We need to do it. We need to do something no one's done before.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this because as a pastor, one of the things that I've thought about a lot for the last 5 to 10 years is we now live in a world where there is no frontier. So I wrote a bunch of frontier songs
Right.
because I had a weird dream. And we won't talk about that now. We'll talk about it some other time. But I realized several years ago there is no frontier, and that one possibility for what seems like the explosion of depression and malaise
Maybe that.
that hits everyone, but especially hits men. And if some of the listeners think that's sexist, well, then I'm sorry. I don't. I just see it a lot in my pastoral work. Like men are bored.
Well, I think the suicide rate for men has skyrocketed the last few years.
Well, the suicide rate for white men who are like 40 or 50 is through the roof. You know, and we can't say it's all this one thing.
No,
but
it's not all one thing.
But there is something that about our modern existence is like, where is the frontier now?
Well, it's in space. And
yeah,
the
that's
question
definitely
is,
one of the places.
yeah, and it's in the imagination too, you know, which is like my record was exploring psychologically or mentally exploring new territory for me, you know. And man, when I sang my last lyric,
Yeah.
I went upstairs, I hang out with John, we drink a beer, John Class, my producer. He leaves and I'm by myself at home because my kids, and because I got a studio at my house. My kids and my wife had been gone for the weekend. And I just about bawled my eyes out, man.
Why?
Like I hadn't been that sorrowful I don't know, dude.
Why? Because the project was
It
over?
was over and I was done discovering. It was just so sad, man.
Well, listen, I have listened to your record several times, and the end is a gut punch.
The
And
last song.
Yeah, no, it's a gut
Can
punch.
I tell you about that song for just a
Yeah.
brief second?
Please tell us.
Because we got to go. So the last song on the record is one of my favorites. I wrote an opera, and I wrote a conversation between.
Well, you kind of have to know about the first song.
You do. So the first song is Born, right?
Yes.
It's about the Big Bang. It's not born as in you're giving birth. It's born as in you're being born, carried,
Yes.
like you bear a child,
Yes.
right? So we were born, we were carried in a surge of flame, right? And it's the question of consciousness and the question of purpose, right? Saying if all things started in a bold expansion of light and fire, what does that mean for the universe, right? And so the last song is Born 2, and it's kind of the opposite, right? So it's death, or it's a conversation between nihilism, which is the dead universe out there that perhaps has nothing in it. I hope it does, but it may not have anything, Adam. We might have
Sure.
just endless amounts of nothingness.
And when I heard that song, I received it as like that nihilistic black hole universe is singing to life. Do whatever
it
you
is.
want. I'm going to get you.
Yep, that's it.
Is that the song?
That's it. So
Okay.
there's a conversation between nihilism and consciousness, and they're going back and forth. So nihilism says, you know, one of the first lyrics is, "The road ahead descends without escape."
I swallow you.
Yeah. You can't do anything. I've got you. And when you're, not only that, when you're finally gone, when consciousness is finally dead, you might as well have never been here. Because at that point, it don't matter. Nothing matters, right? It's going to be just as if there never was. Just as if you were never born, right? If you think about before you were born, there was nothing. And so consciousness replies by saying, well, if this is all true, why the hell am I alive? Why am I thinking, right?
Yeah.
Where did this come from? Where did my ability to, right?
Yeah, it
And
makes
so
no
it goes
sense.
back and forth, and they kind of argue a little bit. But then the very last, I drew prayers from all over the world, from like every tradition. So I'm getting emotional here.
It's amazing.
And you can't hear them, but I sang them underneath the music
Yeah.
as it dies. And so like the music and all that, it all just fades out. And I'm singing these prayers, man.
Yeah. Amen. No, you feel it. It's in the record. Whatever you did, you captured it.
Well, I hope so.
It's great. Okay, so when is that record going to come out?
Well, it was supposed to come out next month, but you know, I built a new building and
A new chiropractic office.
yeah, and I have been doing nothing but that for 5 months.
Okay, so you're
And
going to
so
give
I called my publicist and said, "Hey, I need to pump the brakes just a hair longer because I'm not ready." Like I just got an email from BMI a week ago. They said, "Hey, your stuff's not set up correctly yet," and I literally haven't even had time to deal with it because I'm at my office 7 days a week.
Okay, so that's your next thing then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah,
what's the
I'm
record
hoping by the
called?
fall. It's called The Reaches.
All right, we'll help you pump it when it comes out.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, that's so good, Samuel. Hey, so what are you going to do next?
My next record?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna go hard left turn. I'm gonna go Appalachian folk, a lot of original, but some covers, and it's gonna be guttural. It's gonna be the opposite of Up in Space. It's gonna be down to earth in the dirt.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna,
Can't
but
wait.
it'll still have that soul in it, you know.
That's good. That's good. All right, Sam, I want to maybe end the podcast like this, like we end all the podcasts.
Yes.
Can you just tell us the time you experienced great joy?
Yeah. So I knew you were going to ask this.
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, this is like, so you know Dave Taylor.
Yes, we have a mutual friend, Dave Taylor.
Yeah, Kansas City. He worked with John Wimber for a couple of years, way back in the 80s. And he does the John Wimber Come Holy Ghost thing. So Dave was a real mentor to me.
Amazing prophetic guy.
Yeah, he was an amazing mentor to me. One of the sweetest fathers I've ever had in my life, right? I could tell you 1,000 Dave stories of how kind he was to me. But we had like a home church every other week. We'd meet on Sunday nights, and it wouldn't interfere with regular church. So we had these just scragglers that would come in, you know, people who more or less don't fit wherever else, and they would just hang out in this. And the house church would be packed out, man. I mean, it'd be standing room only usually. And I remember one night, it was like Jesus was in the room. And I know we all say that, but it was like heaven was in the room.
In the living room.
I couldn't believe it. Like I literally was saying in my head, I cannot believe how beautiful this is. I couldn't get over it. And the thing is, I saw glory. Now it sounds like I believe you. Sounds like a Pentecostal thing. Dude, I saw glory on people's skin, man. It was like I knew that I was awake. I wasn't on psilocybin, right? I wasn't tripping, and I was awake.
Nobody taking mushrooms.
Nothing like that. And I was like looking at these people, and what's interesting is their frailty was not hidden from me, right? Their weaknesses, because they're all a bunch of scragglers like me, right? I was still aware of all that stuff, but it was like the glory shone through it. Mm. And I could see Jesus in every person. It was just like, what is this, man?
Amazing.
I was so happy. I couldn't believe how happy I was. I just couldn't believe it.
Sammy, was that a moment where you were awake, or was everyone awake?
I don't know, man. I'm aware of that possibility, right? Could have just been me. I could have been having a trip.
I'm not asking that to diminish it.
You know, I could have been having one of those epinephrine, dopamine trips, you know, whatever, but...
Nah. It's the Holy Ghost.
It felt real to me, dude.
It's the Holy Ghost. Oh, I love that story.
Yeah. It's about as happy as I've ever been.
Oh, I love it. Sammy, could I get you to play a song for the end of the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, that's what I want to do. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you.
Man, thanks for having me.
Dude, this was awesome. I love listening to this. I hope this encourages people to dig deep.
Yeah.
And to
explore
and take risks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what's in your story. Cool, man. Let's do a song.
All right, let's do it. It's just a song I learned. I heard from a old guy, banjo player, I think, called Freddie Cochran. And I've added quite a slew of verses to it and changed the verses that they had, just to kind of zone in the theme a little bit of the Western myth. I am the greatest sailor that ever rode the well. I got daisies in my pistol, I got bullets in my breast. As an orphan young and hungry, the Apache took me in. They taught me to run, the buffalo gave me a brand new name. In 1843, I joined the immigrant band. We founded San Antonio, we dug the Rio Grande. In the dust of the Alamo, every enemy turned a friend. When I danced the flamenco and blazed across the sand. Went out on the prairie where I learned to rob and steal. When I robbed the pretty maidens, how happy they did feel. But the wildest and the prettiest, she chased and tracked me down, stripped me to my stockings, and she's my baby now. golden calf was weaned, I wrestled the angel Gabriel, plucked a feather from his wing. They say there's a queen in England, they say there's a pope in Rome, but they best stay far away from the wilds that I call home. I am the greatest outlaw that ever rode the west. I got daisies in my pistol, I got bullets in my breast. At night when you hear them wild wolves moaning, screaming now, well, it just might be my baby, she's on the midnight prowl.
Hi everyone, this is Melissa Keller, Events Director for Vineyard Worship. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I've got a couple of ways you could really help us. First of all, review the podcast on iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media, Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.